Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when you realize that people move away from you simply because you are who you really are? That strange feeling that the more authentic you become, the more alone you become? It's not paranoia, it's not your imagination. There is a cruel truth that few have the courage to admit. Whoever dares to carry their inner truth, whoever refuses to wear social masks, invariably becomes the target of something much darker than simple disagreement. Franz Kafka, that master in deciphering the labyrinths of the human soul, understood like no one else that authenticity is an act of rebellion that awakens in others a primitive fury, a corrosive envy, and an irresistible impulse to isolate. You know this pain because you live it every day. It's that feeling of being a stranger in your own world, of speaking a language that few understand, of carrying a light that blinds those accustomed to the comfortable darkness of collective lies. Today, let's dive together into this liberating truth that can transform your suffering into wisdom and your loneliness into genuine spiritual strength. If you've come this far, it's because you recognize in yourself this lonely journey of someone who chose the truth in a world addicted to illusions. This channel was created especially for people like you, who feel the weight of being authentic in a society that punishes honesty. Here, you are not alone. Sign up now and activate the bell, because every week we bring you deep reflections that will help you transform your sensitivity into power, your difference into purpose. Each video is a meeting between souls who share this same journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth. And if this content resonates with your experience, leave a like so that other people going through the same situation can find this refuge of understanding and growth. Your participation strengthens our community of truth seekers. Franz Kafka lived this experience viscerally. He knew what it meant to carry within himself a truth that others not only rejected, but attacked with an almost animalistic ferocity. In his most profound works, Kafka portrayed characters who find themselves transformed into misunderstood creatures, isolated not by choice, but by a cruel inevitability that accompanies all those who refuse to live on the surface of social conventions. Gregor Samsa's metamorphosis into an insect is not just a fantastical allegory, it is the literal representation of what happens to anyone who dares to show their true nature in a world that demands absolute conformity. Think about your own experience. How many times have you felt those butterflies in your stomach when you realize that your honesty has created an uncomfortable silence in a conversation? How many times have you noticed looks of disapproval when you expressed a genuine opinion, a deeper reflection, a perspective that deviated from the socially accepted script? This feeling is neither coincidence nor bad luck. It is the inevitable result of a profound psychological phenomenon that Kafka understood with crystal clarity. Truth functions like an unforgiving mirror that reflects back to people all the lies they tell themselves every day. When you carry your truth with authenticity, when you refuse to pretend that everything is okay when it isn't, when you dare to question paradigms that everyone accepts without thinking, you inadvertently force those around you to confront their own existential cowardice. And that, my friend, is something most human beings simply cannot bear. It is easier to destroy the messenger than to face the message. It is more comfortable to attack those who carry the light than to admit that they chose to live in the shadows. The hate you face is not really directed at you as a person. It is directed at the truth you represent, the authenticity you embody, the courage you demonstrate in living according to your deepest values, even when it costs you socially. When someone reacts with hostility to your sincerity, they are actually reacting to their own reflection of their inner lies. Their authentic presence serves as a constant reminder of everything these people could be if they had the courage to shed their masks, their social games, their lives built on foundations of self-deception. Envy arises from an unconscious perception that you have something they have lost or never had, the inner freedom to be who you really are. Even when your life is no longer materially successful, even when you face practical difficulties, there is a spiritual richness in your authenticity that others instinctively recognize. They realize that you have access to a dimension of the human experience that has been denied to them by their own choices of conformity. This perception generates a deep, corrosive envy that manifests itself in constant attempts to belittle you, to question your motivations, to find fault with your integrity. And you, have you ever felt this suffocating pressure of trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided they don't understand you? Have you ever noticed how some people seem to actively look for reasons to criticize your most authentic choices? If you are experiencing this right now, if you feel that your honesty has become a burden that few can carry with you, leave this sentence in the comments. My truth is greater than the fear of being alone. Your courage in sharing this may be exactly the light that another lost soul on this same journey needs to see today to feel less isolated in their own search for authenticity. The isolation that accompanies those who carry the truth is not an accident. It is an unconscious but effective social strategy of keeping the status quo untouched. When a person is systematically excluded, ignored, or marginalized by their refusal to participate in social games based on falsehood, it serves as a warning to everyone else about the price of authenticity. It's a cruel but effective way to discourage anyone who might be considering abandoning their own social masks. Kafka portrayed this isolation with impressive psychological precision in practically all of his work. Its protagonists invariably find themselves trapped in absurd, labyrinthine systems, where the rules are incomprehensible, where logic doesn't apply, where any attempt to find meaning or justice results in further confusion and alienation. This is not just a fantastic literary creation. It is a faithful representation of the lived experience of anyone who refuses to accept collective illusions as absolute truths. Modern society operates largely based on tacit consensus about what should be ignored, about which truths are convenient and which are too disturbing to be publicly acknowledged. When you carry your inner truth with transparency, you automatically become a threat to these fragile consensuses. Its mere existence questions the legitimacy of a social system built on layers of collective self-deception. Think about family dynamics, for example. How many families function based on shared secrets, on truths that can never be spoken out loud, on rigid roles that everyone must play to maintain the illusion of harmony? When a member of that family decides to live authentically, when they refuse to continue pretending that dysfunction is normal, when they dare to name elephants in the room that everyone has turned a blind eye to for decades, the reaction is rarely one of gratitude. More often than not, this person becomes the scapegoat, the one who is making trouble, who is being dramatic, who should leave things as they are. In the professional environment, the dynamics are even more cruel. Entire organizations can function based on institutionalized lies, on toxic cultures that everyone pretends not to notice, on questionable practices that are accepted because it's always been that way. Dewey. The employee who dares to point out these inconsistencies, who refuses to play political games, who maintains his integrity even when it harms his chances of promotion, quickly discovers that honesty is not a quality valued in practice, only in speech. The Kafkaesque transformation you experience when you decide to live authentically is gradual, but irreversible. Just as Gregor Samsa wakes up one day, discovering that he is transformed into something his family considers monstrous, you may wake up one day and realize that your refusal to wear social masks has transformed you, in the eyes of others, into something equally incomprehensible and threatening. The difference is that his transformation is not into an insect, but into a fully realized human being, which ironically is even more disturbing for those who have chosen to remain in larval states of spiritual development. This transformation brings with it a particular loneliness that goes beyond the simple lack of company. It is the existential loneliness of carrying a consciousness that few share, of seeing connections that others ignore, of deeply feeling realities that most prefer to keep on the surface. It's like having extra meaning in a world of people who insist that meaning doesn't exist or doesn't matter, but there is a terrible beauty in this solitude. It forces you to develop a deeper relationship with yourself, to find within your own soul the resources that we would normally seek in the approval and company of others. When the external world becomes hostile or indifferent to your truth, you have no choice but to develop an inner fortress that no one can invade or destroy. Kafka understood that this journey of increasing isolation was not necessarily a tragedy, but potentially a higher form of existence. Its characters, even in their most absurd and desperate situations, maintain an inner dignity that no external circumstances can touch. They may be transformed, persecuted, misunderstood, but they remain true to an inner truth that transcends all social pressures to conform. The truth you carry is not just your personal opinion or your individual perspective. It is your conscious participation in something much larger than yourself. It is your direct connection to universal realities that most people have lost or never developed. When you speak this truth, when you live by it, you are channeling something that comes from far beyond your limited personality. This is why its authenticity has such disturbing power. It's not just you talking, it's reality itself expressing itself through you. And this is exactly why hatred, envy, and isolation are such predictable reactions to your authentic presence. You represent a direct connection to dimensions of the human experience that most people cut out of their lives in the name of social security, material comfort, the approval of others. Their existence is a constant reminder of the price they paid for this apparent security, the loss of touch with who they really are. The envy you awaken is not envy of your external possessions or achievements. It's envy of your inner freedom, your ability to stay connected to yourself regardless of external pressures, your courage to prioritize integrity over convenience. Even when your life seems more difficult on the outside, there is a richness to your experience that others recognize and secretly desire. Hatred arises when this envy becomes unbearable. It's easier to hate you for having what they lost than to do the hard work of reclaiming your own authenticity. It is simpler to attack your difference than to confront your own existential cowardice. Hatred functions as a psychological defense that protects these people from the need to question their own life choices. But perhaps the cruelest aspect of this dynamic is how it can make you question your own sanity and worth. When you're consistently treated like you're the problem, when your honesty is met as aggression, when your authenticity is interpreted as arrogance, it's natural to begin to wonder if it wouldn't be better to simply conform, to wear the masks everyone else wears, to play the games everyone else plays. This temptation to abandon your inner truth in favor of social acceptance is perhaps the most difficult test you will face on your spiritual journey. It's the moment when the weight of loneliness becomes almost unbearable, when the pressure to conform reaches its peak, when every fiber of your social being screams at you to give up this madness of trying to live with total integrity. Kafka showed through his characters that resisting this temptation is what separates those who truly grow spiritually from those who remain trapped in endless cycles of self-betrayal. Joseph K., a protagonist of The Trial, goes through a maze of legal and social absurdities, but never completely abandons his search for understanding and justice, even when it leads to physical destruction. The profound lesson here is that your inner truth does not need to be understood or accepted by others to be valid. Its authenticity does not depend on external approval to have value. In fact, the need for external approval for your inner truth is a fundamental contradiction that only weakens both. When you truly understand this, when you deeply internalize that your connection to the truth transcends any social reaction it may provoke, something fundamental changes in your experience of life. The hatred of others becomes irrelevant. Envy loses its power to affect you. Isolation transforms from punishment to freedom. You begin to realize that those who attack or avoid you are actually doing you a favor. They are sparing you from relationships based on falsehood, from interactions that would require you to betray your very essence, from superficial connections that would drain your energy without offering anything substantial in return. The isolation that initially seemed like a curse turns out to be a blessing in disguise. It creates the space you need to develop a deeper relationship with yourself, to explore dimensions of your consciousness that would remain dormant if you were constantly distracted by social dramas and needs for approval. This space of solitude becomes a spiritual laboratory where you can experiment with different aspects of your nature, where you can develop inner abilities you never knew you had, where you can cultivate a form of peace that does not depend on external circumstances to exist. Kafka understood that this journey of increasing isolation does not end with social reconciliation or general acceptance. It ends with personal transcendence, with a form of fulfillment that is beyond the need for external validation. Its most developed protagonists find a kind of inner peace even in the most adverse circumstances, not because they managed to change the world around them, but because they managed to connect with something in themselves that no external circumstances can touch. This is the real promise for those who have the courage to carry their truth to the end, not the promise that one day everyone will understand and accept you, but the promise that you will develop a form of inner completeness that makes understanding and accepting others pleasant when they happen, but not necessary for your peace of mind. There is a fundamental difference between loneliness and isolation. Isolation is something that happens to you. Loneliness is something you consciously choose and cultivate. When you transform societally enforced isolation into chosen solitude, you reclaim your personal power and transform a seeming punishment into an opportunity for deep spiritual growth. In this conscious solitude, you discover that you are never truly alone. There is a dimension of existence where all authentic souls connect, where all seekers of truth share a silent but real communion. You may not have much physical companionship, but you have access to a form of spiritual companionship that transcends limitations of time and space. By carrying your truth with dignity and persistence, you become part of an invisible lineage of human beings who, throughout history, have chosen integrity over convenience, authenticity over approval, inner evolution over comfortable stagnation. Kafka was part of this lineage. You are too. Your journey of carrying the truth in a world that prefers comfortable lies is not just about your personal growth. It's about keeping alive a possibility of higher human existence. It's about preserving a standard of integrity that serves as a beacon to others who may be lost in their own existential confusions. The courage to remain authentic in the face of hostility, envy, and isolation is an act of spiritual service that goes far beyond yourself. It is a form of medicine for a world sick with falsehood, an offering of real possibility amid an ocean of collective illusions. So when you feel the weight of carrying your truth, remember that this weight is not just your personal burden. It is your conscious participation in something much greater. It is your contribution to keeping alive a more authentic and meaningful possibility of human existence. Your persistence in being who you really are, regardless of the social consequences, is an act of love not only for yourself, but for all humanity.